Thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring today's video. Peter Parker with the symbiote is a menace.
Don't call back! All those tests!
Not only inspiring a plethora of memes that live rent-free in my head,
Stings, doesn't it?
but also gave my 6-year-old self the first true iteration of how powerful the symbiote suit can be. We've only seen a few villains in the Sony/MCU actually fight the symbiote. So it got me thinking, what if every Spider-Man villain potentially fought it? Well, that's what we're going to be breaking down in today's video. So before we begin, this video is going to be based off of my current knowledge of these characters, and of course, my opinion. So please don't kill me if you disagree with my rankings here. Now, the tiers go as follows. Dear villain, you've got dirt in your eye. This means Symbiote Spidey leaves this particular villain in the mud, face down, because they have no shot at winning. Clearly, Spidey's messing around. Is this villain may make Spidey laugh here or there, and just give him enough time to not beat the absolute crap out of them. Bit of a scrap just means Spidey might have to work a little bit against them before, turning them in. Double time pain for Peter just means that this villain will most likely beat Symbiote Spidey in almost every encounter, 8 or 9 times out of 10. And of course, poor Peter Parker, lost and alone, is just that. Poor Peter, because he'll be broke trying to pay for his hospital bills after this fight. So without further ado, we start with Carnage. Now, this is a fun fight. Anytime a symbiote versus a symbiote matchup comes up on this list, it's probably going to be some of the hardest to decipher, simply because the weaknesses both share and powers are kind of similar. Now, with Tobey's symbiote, we already know that it enhances his strength, speed, reflexes, and more, but also, it's not necessarily confirmed that his weakness to fire is within this universe. But with Cletus, the Carnage symbiote makes him erratic and full of raw power. You see him just chuck cars with ease. He even became a tornado at some point to escape prison. And by the end of Let There Be Carnage, he overpowers Venom numerous times throughout the movie. However, Peter is smart, and he beat the symbiote by remembering its weakness of sound at the end of Spider-Man 3 to overpower Venom as well. Personally, I think Carnage is going to have the edge over Peter in most fights. I doubt Peter's going to be able to whip out the sound weakness without hurting himself, and Carnage is more powerful than Tobey's symbiote throughout most of Let There Be Carnage. But I do believe Peter could win a few fights here or there, so in my opinion, I'm putting Carnage in double time pain for Peter. Green Goblin, the Dane DeHaan version. Now, we don't get to see much of this version of Green Goblin, but from the few scenes we see of him, I feel like this would be a cakewalk for Symbiote Peter. Not only did Tobey's Peter take on his own Goblin, beating a much stronger version of him with Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, but this new Goblin is an even bulkier version, and if Andrew's Peter is able to take him on, and Tobey is considerably stronger than Andrew's version of the character, even without the symbiote, I think this would be a situation where Peter wins with almost ease. Honestly, I think he's getting stomped by Tobey's Symbiote Peter. He's getting put into the dirt. Now we have Dr. Octopus, but from Into the Spider-Verse. Now, as much as I love Melina's Doc Ock,
if I were a rich man,
I do have to admit that I think Olivia Octavius's Doc Ock from Into the Spider-Verse is much faster, stronger, and her reflexes are quite impressive. In the movie, you can see how quickly her arms can move and how agile she is trying to fight the Spider-Mans and chase after them. Given Tobey's natural strength increase with the suit and his ability to move easily in and out of tight areas, even before the symbiote, I'd say he has a way better shot against her than Peter B did in Spider-Verse, considering he's also much younger too. For the most part, I'd say this matchup is pretty even, given the intelligence she portrays too. I think Doc Ock against Peter would be a bit of a scrap. Now we have Dr. Octopus, but the Raimi version. My GOAT! This is another case of I think Symbiote Peter would just stomp this version of Otto Octavius. Even in Peter's normal state, he puts up a bit of a scrap in Spider-Man 2, but considering Peter's immense strength gained from the symbiote, if Peter was already landing those type of blows normally, those hits with a powerful symbiote Peter would knock him on his ass, especially because he wouldn't be holding back as much. In Spider-Man 2, yes, they put up a bit of a scrap, but in terms of symbiote Peter, it would give Otto less of a chance of winning, especially with how slow he kind of moves. I think the only thing in Otto's favor really is his intelligence, but I doubt that'll work. And other than that, Peter would be toying with him the entire fight. I feel like Spidey would just be messing around with him at that point. Up next, we have Electro from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, a full-fledged Electro might put up more of a fight than you may think. I mean, this Peter loves to dance. Imagine what would happen when he hears the dubstep emanating from this dude's aura. Now, we know from the Amazing Spider-Man that he's very fast, can move in and out of the grid, basically teleport, and release electrical charges from his body. Now, Peter in this movie was able to overload his body and cause him to explode because he was on some sort of technical grid. Now, I don't know where this fight would technically take place. I just kind of used their base versions to throw them in this random hypothetical situation to fight, so I don't know if there would be something like this in my particular fight. But knowing the intelligence of Peter Parker from the Raimi trilogy, I figure he could probably problem solve in a way like this, but I also think brute force could just overpower Electro in this scenario. Or in a similar way that Spectacular did it with using rubber tires to stop Electro, I could totally see Tobey Maguire's doing that. I think this fight would be a bit more tricky than most for Peter, especially if the electricity can alter the symbiote's ability to work in any way. I think it would cause Tobey's symbiote to slow down just a little bit, because I think Andrew's Peter is considerably faster than Tobey's, and so if Tobey is even a little bit slower, Electro could probably cause him a little bit of a fight. So I do think Spidey would be in a bit of a scrap with this version of Electro. Now we're at Green Goblin, the Into the Spider-Verse version. So we barely see this version of the character besides a few moments that he fights Prime Spidey. So it seems that he's got immense strength, speed, and has his own version of pumpkin bombs. Now this version of Spidey ducks, dodges, and rocks this goblin shit a few times, but he's pretty durable considering after all of this he still gets back up. Knowing this version of Peter is pretty much directly inspired by Tobey's Peter with the montage at the beginning, I'm going to consider Tobey to be able to do what this version of Peter is already doing. Amplified with the symbiote, this goblin is getting rocked up and down the city. It would be a clearly messing around kind of fight. And we have Green Goblin from the Raimi universe.
I'm gonna finish her.
And I think this would be a very interesting fight. Knowing Peter wrecked Harry in a battle with the symbiote, having barely used his webs, I think it would kind of go the same way for his father, but maybe more of a fight. Now this goblin does have skeleton-reducing pumpkin bombs, which could prove useful in this hypothetical fight. So if the goblin learns about the symbiote's weakness, his pumpkin bombs could totally wreck Tobey's Peter in a fight. Now the question is if Goblin would even get close enough to land those bombs. I think in most cases it would be unlikely. So similar to Into the Spider-Verse version, I think this would be a case of Peter messing around with this kind of goblin for most of the fight, because Peter only got his ass handed to him in the first movie because he was inexperienced, and it seemed that as the years have progressed, especially by the time he gets the symbiote in 3, I think it would be pretty much lights out for Norman. Next we have New Goblin. I mean, we have first-hand evidence of this version of the character getting his ass beat, bro. He definitely got dirt in his eyes. Now the Lizard from the Amazing Spider-Man is a very strong, fast, and durable creature. And because of the Amazing Spider-Man, we know he's very much capable of taking bullets with ease. He overpowers Andrew's Peter on numerous occasions, even in No Way Home, and is a very intelligent man behind that lizard skin. That being said, he's getting dusted too! Even in No Way Home, we see a small moment where Tobey Spider-Man kicks Lizard in the face, pushing him back. I'm sure given even more enhanced strength, that kick is sending him back to his proper dimension. Lizard's getting dirt in his eyes. Up next, we have Kingpin from Into the Spider-Verse. Bro's getting rocked 6 ways from Sunday. There's no shot Kingpin is beating an enhanced Spider-Man in peak form. It's impressive how he managed to fight Miles nonetheless. However, he was inexperienced. He had his powers for like 2 days. Across the Spider-Verse, Miles would stop Kingpin in about 5 seconds flat. Given Tobey's immediate power increase, reflexes and such, Kingpin is toast. Dirt is definitely getting in that man's gigantic eyes. Up next, we have Mysterio. You serious? The only opportunity this guy has at winning is putting Peter in an illusion where he's rich and has a better haircut. Other than that, come on, man. This bro's getting cooked for dinner. He's getting dirt in his eyes, man. If Tom Holland's Peter is able to dodge his drones, what do you think Tobey's gonna do to his drones, man? Come on now. Now, Prowler from Into the Spider-Verse, other than having an amazing theme, has pretty intense speed and agility in that movie, being able to throw hands with Peter in his prime. However, in Rage with the symbiote, Tobey's Peter would likely get Prowler out of commission pretty quickly. Other than speed, I feel like Prowler doesn't have much else to him, especially with his enhanced agility and spider sense the symbiote provides for Tobey. I'd say that Peter would probably mess around with Prowler more than anything. Rhino from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah, no, this guy, dude, he's not surviving. He's probably gonna be dead. He's putting Rhino to sleep. And speaking of sleep, recently I've had the worst sleep. Maybe it's due to me constantly staying up late and editing, abusing my Premiere Pro subscription. Hey, putting out videos like this isn't easy, alright? Manta Sleep recently reached out to me about using their product, and it honestly couldn't have happened at a better time. So after perusing their catalog, I learned a lot about their products, and one thing Manta Sleep is all about is enriching your ability to get a good night's rest, especially during the summertime, when days are longer and they're much brighter, I've realized that enhancing your environment with proper resting habits is like actually very ideal and very healthy. You know, you learn something new every single day. So recently I've been using their Pro mask for the past couple of weeks. The reason I like using this throughout the day is because I legitimately can't see with this thing on right now with my eyes open. It just completely blocks out the sun, which is really, really good for me. All of their masks are adjustable, so you can put it around anyone's head without having any trouble, even someone like Kingpin. All of them have this very smooth feel to them, which makes your sleep much more comfortable, and it's basically weightless. You don't really feel it on your face at all. If you guys are at all interested in any of their products, check the link in my bio and use code DELICIOUS10 if you want to save 10% off on any of the products that you find the most useful or interesting for your needs. Thanks again to Manta Sleep for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to it. Similar to Carnage, I think any symbiote going up against Peter's symbiote is putting him in a bad spot, especially with how versatile these kinds of symbiotes are, like being able to create weapon constructs and such. Even Venom in his own movie mentioned how Riot is like super dangerous, so I think Peter's down for the count with this one, to be completely honest with you. He's getting double time pain most of the time going up against Riot. Sandman, another one of those villains where we have 4K evidence proving Spider-Man can in fact whoop his ass. I think it's safe to say he's taken it most times. However, we never truly saw how Peter would fare against the giant version of Sandman by the end of that movie with the symbiote, so that's why I'm not actually going to put him in the lowest tier. I think if Sandman did go into his giant form against symbiote Spider-Man, it would be a tougher fight. So he gets a little bit of leeway here. Scorpion from Into the Spider-Verse. Considering this dude got bodied by Spider-Ham and also manhandled by Noir, I think Tobey Spider-Man, especially with the symbiote, would get this guy into a gravestone by minute 2 of this match. Shocker from Homecoming.
The shocker of the shocker. I shock people.
Yeah, this fight would last about 30 seconds, and the only reason I see him not getting destroyed is because I think Peter would want to humor this guy for a little bit before beating him and sending him to jail. So I figure I'm going to put him in the messing around kind of category. Next up, we have Shriek from the Venom movies. Well, considering her main power is his source of weakness, I think this match is one of the first non-symbiote villains that would stomp Peter most of the time with the symbiote. Given the range her sonics can go, I'd say she'd get Peter's symbiote crying on the floor 9 out of 10 times. However, the reason I'm not putting her in the top tier is because if that one time involves Peter getting up close to her, she's finished in about 1 hit since her durability is absolutely nothing. So she's going to get put in the double time pain tier. Up next, we have the Sinister Five from No Way Home. Now, these are my favorite matchups on the tier because I think this is interesting because many of the members here, Peter in his normal suit, have beaten or fought. Plus, one of them, he's beaten in this suit, but if they all worked together, well, I think that's going to be a bit of a scrap for him. I'm not going to assume the 5 will split up like they did in No Way Home, because even then I was confused as to why Goblin waited until they were all dismantled before showing up. So in this case, Doc Ock is still crazy, and Green Goblin is with Electro, Sandman, and Lizard. Yeah, I'm not going to lie, I think this is a 50-50 kind of match, because if Spidey gets the jump on them, then he's got a fair shot. He's dismantled both Green Goblin and Doc Ock before the symbiote. I think with it, he'd take them out faster. As for Lizard and Electro, well, he'd take the Lizard out quite quickly, and Electro may be a longer battle, but I think he'd still win. Now, Sandman in this form would probably be the hardest to take on, so it could go Sandy's way if Peter has no idea how to stop this. So in my opinion, I think it would go in pretty much a bit of a scrap tier. Now we have the Sinister Six from the Insomniac games. Now this group could definitely do some damage to Spidey here. Knowing how badly this Insomniac version got dropped by 1 stab of Scorpion's tail, it would be rough for this version of Spider-Man to go against them, especially since Insomniac's Doc Ock is definitely more intimidating and faster moving than Raimi's Ock. However, the loss of Sandman in this group with replacement of Mr. Negative could work in Spidey's favor here. I feel like Peter's enhanced senses and strength could knock Vulture, Scorpion, and Electro out easily, and then given a few minutes, he'd take out Rhino with raw power too. Negative will get torched the moment Spidey gets close, and finally Ock would probably get torched too once Peter locks in and gets his arms tangled. But like the previous one, the other villains working together could get Peter wrapped up quickly if they work together hard. But my headcanon is that Spec's symbiote is similar to the Raimi one, since a lot of inspiration came to Spec through Raimi's films. So if Spec's symbiote took on the Sinister Six in one, well, Peter's can too, so I'm definitely going to put them in the bit of a scrap territory. Now we have the Spot from Across the Spider-Verse. I mean, this dude folds Spidey with ease, right? He's the most powerful villain on this list. He can transport between dimensions. He's basically a god. Peter with the symbiote would just be sent to a realm where sonics are loud constantly to kill the symbiote. We legitimately have our first poor Peter Parker villain right here. I mean, if you think Peter could beat this guy, let me know in the comments below, because I think it's a clean sweep for the spot here. I literally don't think Peter would be able to do anything to this guy. Up next, we have Tombstone from Spectacular Spider-Man. Although this dude's got tough skin, I don't know, I feel like Spidey with the symbiote could dent him somehow. Spider-Man's strength increase would probably slow him down after a long bout between them anyways. The only reason I'm putting him in the clearly messing around tier is because I think due to his durability, Spider-Man would actually have to take a longer time to beat him. Next, we have Venom from the Sony universe. Like Riot and Carnage, I think this would be a pretty interesting fight. Knowing how big Tom's version of Venom is and the speed he moves at, I think this would be a pretty close matchup. Although I do think I'd give this a bit of a scrap tier, simply because Venom himself says he's weaker than both Carnage and Riot in both of those movies, and then he kind of beat them due to other circumstances. And with the same kind of power set as the symbiote in Spider-Man 3, I could see these two going blow for blow with each other for a while. Next up, we have Vulture from Homecoming. This dude's getting laid out like a Sunday morning picnic blanket. So there you have it, folks. My tier list for mainstream movie Spidey villains going against Tobey's symbiote Spider-Man. Do you agree? As always, this is just my opinion using the knowledge I have of these characters. So if you do disagree, let's have a nice discussion in the comments about it. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed today's video, and if you want to see more of these types of videos. Appreciate you all. Again, thanks to Mantis Sleep for sponsoring today's video, and use code DELICIOUS10 to get your hands on one for a discounted price. And I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.